Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Lumiere Learning Monday. We are on season 4, episode 17, and we have a very popular guest, Jhankar Gadkari, who's coming for the fourth time to talk to us. Jhankar, you came first and talked to us about the history and culture of Mumbai in 2020 July.
Yes,
We did June 2021 decoding Delhi.
yes.
In October of 2022, we did the history of Lucknow, and now you're taking us eastwards to Kolkata.
Oh, yes, of course.
So thank you for that. And today, your topic is going to be discover for us to discover Bengal and to learn about Kolkata in its context and its import and importance in the history of India. That's what you tell us.
Yes,
We're going to do this in two parts. So, the first part, we'll talk about Bengal and Kolkata. And in the second part, we'll talk about Kolkata and focus on the city. So, over to
absolutely.
you, Jankar. And in your style, you always show us a presentation. And we're most excited to speak with you today. Thank you once again for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepa. And it's always a pleasure to be a part of your Learning Mondays. And I always, at the cost of being repetitive, appreciated your initiative in exposing various topics to public at large. And I'm sure it is a great amount of enlightenment which people take home. So, as you have said, let's get on with the job of speaking about Kolkata, going eastward this time. So, Firmans are nothing else but diktats or mandate given by a person in authority. And we all are aware of the fact that the English first landed in Surat around 1600. Let's not go back as 400 years old, but yes, it was Thomas Roe, English representative, who presented himself in 1613 to the then Emperor Jahangir and received a farman, a authority, or a parcha of doing some kind of a trade or an entry permit or a visa in today's time to work in India and be and earn some money. So it was in 1613 that was the first farman given by Mughal Badshah to an Englishman. The second farman, ladies and gentlemen, came in 1717, and there were numerous such farmans which were either achieved by intrigue or force or even otherwise by good relationship. The second Farman, which came in 1717, was one of those Farmans which actually stamped the English stay in India. And it was British East India Company which was allowed to reside in the Mughal country, allowed a free trade only at the payment of rupees 3,000. Can you imagine that? And then there were many more Farmans which came up. It was Dr. William Hamilton, who was a court physician of Farukshire, just because the fact that Dr. William Hamilton helped Farukshire come out of a given disease. This farman was given, and this was a mandate, a blanket mandate for the English to trade freely in India. And that is the time when most of the India was under Mughal. To understand this entire story, we need to understand Bengal. Why was Bengal the focal point of India then and even now? The major revenue generator, it was a port, it was accessible to east and west. It was a settlement of business communities like Marwadis and the then erstwhile Jamindars of Orissa and Bihar. Almost all the colonial powers that we can think about were had factories in Bengal, and that is why English choose Bengal as a place where they can trade. English were the last to come as a colonial power. Trading in silk, muslin, and jute was the order of the day in those days. Look at the kind of people that were already existing and trading in India, and that too in Bengal. The British East India Company, the French East India Company, the Danish East India Company, the Austrian East India Company, the Ostend Company, which was coming from Netherlands, the Dutch East India Company, and so on and so forth. And who was in charge of all these things? The Nawab of Bengal, and he assumed the complete control over it. And Murshidabad, in those days, the capital city of Bengal was Murshidabad, and that was the center point. Ladies and gentlemen, it also was a place of intrigue. It also was a place of dark intrigue. You have to understand this story. It's a completely plot driven story. The capital of Bengal in those days was Sonargaon at some point in time, because at that point in time, when we're talking about pre Mughal and pre Delhi Sultanate era, Deva dynasty had control over that region. And it was Sonargaon which was the capital of Bengal. It was not Bengal, it was Wanga or a Banga dynasty which had a complete control over that region. After they were shifted out of that place, the Murshidabad became the capital city under the Delhi Sultanate, and also it was passed on to Mughals during the Mughal era. It was shifted from Murshidabad to Calcutta by the British in 1772, from Calcutta to Delhi in 1911, and finally from Delhi to New Delhi by the British in 1931. It's a short little story as to how the capital shifted from one place to the other, a power center shifting from one place to the other, and how. As I said, that the Nawabs had a complete control over the entire region. And they were the revenue generators, and not only the revenue generators, but also the revenue collectors. So it was the company Sarkar who finally decided to rival the authority of the Nawabs of Bengal. And they waited for the right time to happen, which came in on the night of 20th of June 1756. And to let you know what happened on the 20th of June 1756, it is a story of the infamous Calcutta Black Hole, in which 143 British inmates were kept, or rather imprisoned, right or wrong, in a very suffocating place overnight. And what happened was, the very next day, only 23 emerged as living people. The rest of them died out of suffocation. This was the biggest blow to the East India Company and the British Sarkar. Whether you call it as a master plan, whether it was predestined, or whether it was a stroke of luck or circumstances, we don't know. But when the Nawabs of Bengal did this act of imprisoning this 143 odd inmates, they were not really soldiers or anybody, but they were typical civilians, but they were confined to that small little area and they suffocated to death. It was in 1756 that act of Nawab, ladies and gentlemen, can be considered to be the turning point for the history of India. That infuriated the English, and it was Robert Clive, who was stationed at that point in time in Madras, decided to overrun and do something about this entire act of black hole. What happened is something which we need to know in details. But anyway, what I'm trying to tell you here is that there was a huge plot which was dealt between the Sardars of Nawab, or the courtesans of Nawab, and the whole thing changed for India. We all know as to what is the meaning of Battle of Plassey, and here it is. What is the plot all about? Murshidabad, as I told you, was then the center power at one time. It is approximately 200 kilometers north of Calcutta. Even you can go to Murshidabad. Many people have not heard about Murshidabad. But if you go to Murshidabad, you will find an opulent place. As you can see, it is a Hazar Dowri palace of the Nawab of Bengal. It's a huge place. Today, they are all turned into museums. There is a huge Imambara in Murshidabad. Now, what is the eventual plot that was hatched against the Nawab? Because Black Hole eventually became a catalyst for the British to make their entry and their inroads into India. This is something which the Britishers were given blanket permit by the Firman of 1770. East India Company was a commercial organization, ladies and gentlemen. However, it got a quasi-governmental status in this region to mint money, forge diplomatic relationship, build fortresses, have their own private armies, building factories and trading posts. Which commercial organization has such kind of, uh, as you may say, privileges by all means? But these people were able to extract that from the Farman of 1770. The Fort William, which we talked about, and the Black Hole, this is 23 of close to 150 people. They were confined into the small room of 18 by 14 feet. Can you imagine 150 people being pushed into 18 by 14 feet? That was the trigger. That was a real trigger for the entire story to happen. Now, here is the story. The story is all about the merchant who was operating in Bengal. The name of the merchant was Amir Chand or Omi Chand. He was a Punjabi Khatri, and he was also a part of a broker in the court of Sirajuddaulah, who was the Nawab, then Nawab of Bengal. He was also the author of the conspiracy against Nawab. What happened is this: Robert Clive, who was stationed at that point in time in Madras, made Watts the company's representative to the Nawab court of the court of Nawabs in Murshidabad, and he worked out a plan for the final overthrow of Nawab. Watts set up a contact with the people who were already a part and parcel of the Nawab's coterie. And who were they? Mir Jafar, Rai Dulra, Yar Lutf Khan, and Jagat Singh. Jagat Singh, by the way, was one of the richest and the wealthiest merchants in those days. What they did was something very, very amazing. They signed a treaty with Mir Jafar at the head of this entire conspiracy. He was the main conspirator. So Watts and Omichand signed a treaty with Mir Jafar saying that they would not be helping Sirajuddaulah, the Nawab of Bengal, in case and whenever Clive and the forces attack Murshidabad. And that's exactly what they did. Battle of Plassey happened on the 23rd of June, 1756, ladies and gentlemen, and it lasted only for 11 hours. And just to let you know what happened, the forces of Mir Jafar, the forces of Jagat Singh did not move an inch. Sirajuddaulah found himself completely isolated, and the forces of Sirajuddaulah, which comprised of all the forces of Mir Jafar and the rest, which were 40,000 in number, were routed by Clive with only 3,000 plus coming from East India Company. 40,000 against 3 to 4,000, and 40,000 also included the French. End of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Clive became a victorious, wicked, cunning, and the most administrative capable person who was given the record and the honor of being the builder of British Empire in yet another huge subcontinent called India. Omission, as a result of which, who wanted to have 5% of the entire loot, was also deceived by the British. Omission, end of the day, committed suicide, as it is so said, or maybe he died a natural death. But before doing that, he made a huge charity to two hospitals of Britishers, and that is also been recorded in the British records. Here is a case where you can see Mir Jafar meeting Robert Clive. He just withdraws from the battlefield along with his entire troops. The battlefield of Plassey, as you see, was with 40,000 forces of Nawab, including Mir Jafar, French, and the others against Clive, that is 2 to 3,000. Amazing, amazing amount of victory. Nobody has ever imagined about something. This is a monument at Palashi. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, it is not Plassey. The Indian name is Palashi, and that is where the Waterloo of the subcontinent started its began. The Black Merchant, as Omichan called himself, the Black Merchant, he bequeathed 2,000 pounds. In those days, it was a huge amount of money to two hospitals. One was a foundling hospital for the children, and the second one was a Magdalen Hospital for prostitutes in London. And his name appears in the list of benefactors as the Black Merchant of Calcutta. These are the records. Everything that I am talking to you, my friends, is having some reference, whether it is in the form of a read, whether it is in the form of extracted records, or whether it is in the form of personal visits to those places, just to verify that, to ensure that everything that we speak of has an unbiased outlook, has an unbiased way of putting it across. So it was a Black Merchant of Calcutta who actually triggered this entire plot, aided and abetted by Robert Clive and his deputy, ultimately died a very painful death, as it is known as. But yes, he did a good job of bequeathing some part of his property to these two hospitals, and his name still stands as an immortal name in the records of these two hospitals: Foundling Hospital for the children, and also Magdalen Hospital for prostitutes in London. The main man behind the plot, and we need to know the man who actually made the big difference to this country, to you and me, a man who came from a very frugal background, a man who was supposed to be a naughty person, a man who was supposed to be a rogue. To an extent, he was even known as a person who was a robber, is Robert Clive. Story of the Empire Builder. Born in 1725 in Shropshire, Robert Clive was the eldest of the 13 children of his rich father, Richard, the lawyer and the former MP. He studied in a grammar school in Whitefield, and he was expelled for three times, ladies and gentlemen, the man who built this country in the hands of British. He was expelled from the school three times for rough behavior. He returned home and became a criminal, extorting money from shopkeepers. Clive's father packed him off to India. He started off as a clerk in Madras Regiment of British East India Company. He became bored and troublesome and tried to commit a suicide. He tried to shoot himself in the head twice, but the pistol did not go off. So he felt that he was made for some better purpose. He finally joined the East India Company as a private army and became a reputed soldier for his bravery and his chivalry and his discipline. Recaptured Calcutta from Nawab, as I told you, after after the Battle of Plassey. He routed the Nawab's 40,000 strong army with less than 2,000 men at the Battle of Plassey. The victory opened India for further British conquest, ladies and gentlemen, and he was a severe opium addict, and he died of that at the age of 49. He was also known by the end of the day as the creator of Pax Britannica. What saved Clive's reputation was that he created Bengal a Pax Britannica. Moreover, Plassey was the beginning of the end of the French influence on the subcontinent. Without any doubt, ladies and gentlemen, Clive in India laid a foundation for the vast British Empire that was to follow. I'm reading this verbatim only to make it a little more impactful. What did he do? He established the British power, though it was not a British power in the literal sense, the power of the East India Company in the literal sense of it. Not only that, but he and the British, who had the basic competition with the French on the continent, they routed their presence from the face of Bengal. So they took care of the French and took care of the power of the Nawab in Bengal. And that was his achievement. That was his achievement. The British Empire was adopted, and they adopted as a role of global policeman. So let's talk very briefly about Calcutta. The former name of Calcutta was Calicut. Calicut is derived from Bengali word Kali Kshetra, or the ground of goddess Kali. It may be the original settlement on the bank of canal called Khal. Now, we need to put this together by the end of the day when I am taking you around, making you understand the importance of Bengal, importance of Calcutta, and then the uniqueness of Calcutta. So, whether it came out of the Kali Kshetra or whether it came out, the name came from or originated from Khal, which is canal, we will have to give it to the guests. But yes, it started off as Calcutta, as anglicized name, and again has gone back to Kali Kshetra in the form of Kolkata. This is the oldest map of Calcutta. For your information, my friends, these three villages of Chunauti, Kalikata, and Govindpura were chosen by the Britishers for settlement. These three villages, as you see it, were chosen by the British for settlement, and these are on the banks of Bhagirathi, Ganges, or Hooghly. The same river, known in different forms, different names, in different parts. But yes, today it is commonly known as Hooghly. It is nothing else but a part of Ganga. It is also known as Bhagirathi. These are the three villages, and they decided to settle on the eastern part of Hooghly River. You can see Calcutta here. You can see the last village, which is also known as Govindpur. The oldest map of Calcutta tells you that. Why was Calcutta chosen to be the place for future expansion of the British trade? Job Charnock in 1690 considered to be the founder decided to have this area, this area which was Kalikata, to be the part of their future trade. One reason, it was protected by Hooghly on the west side, it had a creek on the north side, and on the eastern side it had a salt lake. So it had its own natural protection that it had. Second thing, the French, the Dutch, and the European settlement also were existing in those areas right from the beginning. And that is where this Sultanati, Kalikata, and Gobindpura was considered to be the place for expansion, trading, and also building the fortress. And what was the fortress called? St. Williams. And that was the chosen place by Job Charnock, and that was the reason that he actually made an appeal to the then governor of East India Company as to why we should shift only here. Okay, these presence of these merchants may not have been responsible for Charnock's life, but yes, actually, when as it is written and recorded by the historian of those days, Charnock chose that area for a particular reason. If you see, the title of my presentation has a banyan tree, and it was the banyan tree that attracted Charnock. When the first occupation of Satanati happened by Job Charnock, he was inspired and attracted by the Maidan, as we know it, as a huge ground which had a people tree, under which many merchants, as I had told you, who already had their own trading posts, used to sit and enjoy hookah. He himself used to have hookah. That place was known by the Britishers as Boy Takona. Boy Takona actually comes from the Indian name Baitakkhana, which is a place for anybody to rest. And that was the junction of Bow Bazaar and Lower Circular Road today. If you need to know that, this people tree doesn't exist anymore, but that corner exists where the people tree at some time was. And if you have to say that the future of this country was written under that tree, you would not be wrong. If you have to say that the countries today and tomorrow and yesterday had something to do with that people tree, you would not be wrong. It is not anymore, but it is at this point in time possibly very close to something near Sialda railway station. This is the famous Bow Bazaar, which used to be a Maidan at some time. It is not. It is the most bustling and happening place for the Calcuttans, for their businesses. And where does Bow Bazaar come from? Bow Bazaar basically comes from Bhavani or Bhavani. As you may know, that most of the Bengali names do not have V, and they pronounce things in the form of uh, V is replaced by B, and it is Babani, and that Babani was Babani Bazaar, became Bhavani Bazaar, and then Bhavani was shortlisted as Bo Bazaar. It also had a place, the Baitakana also had a place which was a old Pilroy. Pilroy is nothing else but the execution center. The early town of Fort Williams, as you may see it here, you can see Fort Williams here, and the south and the entire surrounding area, which is quite apparent for you to understand where Hooghly is and where we are. These are the few snippets of Fort William on the eastern bank of Hooghly River, built in 1696. Is the Fort William from inside and outside. Lal Bazaar, just for your records, as it looked earlier, Dalhousie area. important area today. Chitpur Road, Fort William from Hooghly from and Britain, and so on and so forth. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, what they had come here for, they achieved it. They opened up the headquarters for East India Company, not actually ruled over by the Empress of India or the Queen Victoria, but overlooked by the royalty. And this East India Company headquarters, you can see it in Calcutta. Calcutta Corinthians. The reason why I'm giving you this as a Calcutta Corinthians uh, is that Calcutta commands so many monuments, which are either the copies or inspirations coming from some European monuments, or having some uniqueness in that. Here is the Writers' Building of Kolkata. Writers' Building was known for the fact that the junior officers of East India Company used to keep record in that building, and it is known, and those junior officers were known as writers. And this is how the name came in. This is in 1780 on the left hand side, and this is the present Writers' Building. The Strand, the basic or the main road of Calcutta is known as Strand, and why it is made, and it is said that it is built by the British soil. There's a very nice story about it. Empty British ships used to come to Calcutta from Britain, only to be loaded by the goods from Calcutta to be traded. Now, having an empty ship coming all the way from Britain was a dangerous proposal, because an empty ship can be a dangerous thing in the rough seas. So now you need to load it with something or the other. They had nothing to load from Britain. So they loaded the clay and the soil of Britain. And all they did was made it heavy and made it safe for the journey between Britain and Calcutta. That soil was dumped on the shores of Calcutta. And out of that soil, this road, today known as the Strand, the main road, the main arterial road, which is skirting the Hooghly, was built. And that is why Strand was built by the British soil. This is the Shahid Mandir. Again, as I said, either the architecture was taken up or imported, or this particular Shahid Mandir was an Octaloni monument. It is 165 feet. Its base is Egyptian, its column is Syrian, and the cupola is Turkish. Western influence can be also seen in the Raj Bhavan, which has been inspired by Kendalston Hall in Derbyshire in England. What I'm trying to tell you here is that most of these things that we see here are either imported, the ideas and the designs, or inspired. Victoria Monument or a memorial on lines with the Taj Mahal. On lines we have on the Taj Mahal. Here is Mughal architecture. Nakoda Mosque. If you see the Sikandara of Agra, that is Akbar stone, you will find this is on the same lines. Kolkata High Court. Yes, please, cotton cloth clothes. It is so identical. You can see that. It is in Belgium. Here is a story of NRS Medical College, or Neil Ratan Sarkar Medical College. It was the first medical college established in India in 1837. It started as to be known as Pauper Hospital, then the Campbell Hospital and Medical School, and finally the one as it is today known as Neil Ratan Sarkar Medical College. The story behind this is it was the first medical college of India, and Madhusudan Gupta, whom you see it on the left hand side, was the first student at the college and the first Indian doctor. For your information, Anandibai Gopal Joshi, who is termed to be the first Indian women doctor, had a small stint here. She was born, and you will be surprised, she was born in Maharashtra. She moved from her native place to Kalyan, and from Kalyan to Alibag, and then finally to Kolhapur. Her husband took employment in Calcutta, only to see that only to see that we are able to she is able to get the right kind of educational background of medicine. She moved from there to US, and she turned out to be the first Indian woman to be the doctor coming from India. The first batch of the students in that hospital were 50. The stipend was 7 to 12 months, and the pay of the native doctors was 30 rupees per month. Unbelievable. With this, ladies and gentlemen, let us stop for the day for the part one of Kolkata. Thank you very
We will
much.
continue in the next episode, and we will let Jankar tell us what happens next. Thank you, Jankar.